Hello, everyone. In this video, we are going to talk about an important aspect of research design, and that is writing strategies for your research proposal. Now, as we've mentioned in previous videos, having a blueprint or a plan to work with before you dive into the actual writing of your research proposal is so essential because it helps guide you as a researcher and it informs your decisions and your actions with respect to the entire research study. So, think of your research proposal, like I said, as a blueprint for your entire paper. Just as, for example, an architect would need a detailed plan to build a house, researchers also need a well structured plan that will guide their work as they move along. So, having a clear and strong proposal is so important because it will lay out the steps you're going to take as a researcher, and it will also outline the research problem you are addressing, as well as how you're going to collect and analyze the data that will help solve your research problem. When you have a clear structure for your research proposal, it's easier to keep your study organized and ensure that everything flows logically. So let's talk now about the role of good writing. When you're writing your research paper, it's not enough to simply present your ideas, right? It's not a matter of just reading ideas from other research papers, such as when you are working on your literature review and then you just simply dump all these ideas onto the paper. It's not like that. It's supposed to be more than that. You need to present those ideas clearly and in a logical, rational way so that the reader will be able to understand what it is exactly that you are trying to convey. A well written proposal or research report allows the readers to understand your paper and its importance either to them, maybe they're practitioners, or to the entire field in which the paper is situated or in which your research topic is situated. So this is obviously important for your audience because your audience may include people who are not experts in the field that you are writing in, right? Or they can be people whose first language is not English. And so you need to write your paper in such a way that it is not too technical, that people who are not familiar with the field would have a hard time understanding what you are trying to say or what you are trying to explain. And at the same time, it should not also be too complex in its language, such that the average English speaker or someone who's perhaps not a very advanced English speaker would have. Again, a challenging time to understand what you are basically trying to say in your paper. So, good writing makes complex ideas easier to understand and it also helps avoid misunderstandings. Now, let's move on to the key elements of a research proposal. A well structured proposal is the foundation of your study. Now, these elements they help others understand what you are trying to achieve through this paper and how you plan to do it. So, first, defining the research topic. Your research topic is the question or problem your study will address. So, this is where you need to clearly articulate what your research is about. As in, explain why is this issue important? Why should anyone care about it? Right? A well defined research topic will guide the rest of your proposal, as mentioned. So do take the time to write it and get it, correctly. You don't want to rush this part because it lays down the foundation for the entire paper and it's going to determine and inform all the future actions or steps that you're going to take for the rest of your research study. If your topic is too broad, it can lead to confusion. And on the other hand, if it's also too narrow, it may limit the impact of your study. So you need to find the right balance between your topic not being too broad such that it's difficult to pinpoint now exactly which niche you would like to focus on, but also not make it too narrow so that it would just benefit really a small number of people. Next, you need to review existing knowledge. Okay, and this is what we do for our review of related literature in chapter 2. Before you begin your research, you need to know what has already been studied and what has already been said about your particular research topic. This is where your literature review comes in. So, the review helps you position your study within the broader academic conversation. It helps you understand, what do we already know about this topic? Okay? What are the research gaps that exist in the current research? So, your job is to explain how your study will fill those research gaps or how it's going to provide new insights. And that would be the novelty or the contribution of your study. Now, this part of your proposal shows that you have done your homework and that your research rather is building on a solid foundation. It is not just simply a research that has just transpired out of nowhere. It has clearly been adequately built on previous literature, and so you are simply moving forward from there. Next, you must set clear research objectives. So, these objectives outline what you hope to achieve with your research. They should be directly related to the research problem, and it should also be clearly stated. So, objectives help keep your research focused, and so every step you take should align with these goals. In fact, I know of some advisors and a lot of other panel members who prefer that when you go ahead and discuss your findings in the results and discussion chapter, ideally you are to present it according to the research objectives that you have laid out early on in the paper. Why, you might ask? Because that helps organize your results and discussion, your findings, a lot better. And it gives us immediately a glimpse of how much of the objectives you were able to fulfill. And it would also give us an idea immediately if there are any objectives that you were not able to answer through your study. Now, lastly, you need to describe your setting and your participants. So, where will your study take place? Okay, where? What is the research locale? And who is going to be involved? Who are your target participants? Who are your respondents? Who makes up your sample? So, are you studying a specific community, a specific organization, or a specific population? You need to discuss these details. You need to be able to describe your research locale and the sample or the people that you would like to target. You need to discuss them in detail, you need to describe them, and you need to provide identifiers so that the readers will also know exactly who you worked with. So, providing details about your setting and participants helps others understand the context of your research and whether the findings can be applied to other settings. Now, we talk about the methods and analysis sections of your proposal. These are critical because they explain how you will actually conduct your research and interpret your findings. First, let's cover data collection methods. You need to clearly explain how you plan to gather the data for your study. You need to describe and explain, are you going to be using surveys? Or are you going to be conducting interviews? Or are you going to be conducting experiments? So each method has its strengths and weaknesses. And so your choice should depend on what you are trying to learn, your choice of these data collection methods. And so you need to be also aware of the advantages and disadvantages of using each kind of data collection method before you actually select one, and be able to explain also and justify your selection in the paper. For example, if you're studying people's attitudes or behaviors, surveys might be appropriate for that purpose. If you want to explore deeper insights or you want to be able to listen to personal experiences, interviews in that case would be more useful, right? Because interviews are great scenarios and basically instances wherein you can give time to the participant to really relay their thoughts, their feelings, right, their insights. And so that would give you a richer and more deeper um, data that you could work with. So be specific about the tools and techniques you are going to use because this helps others understand how you will obtain reliable data. Now that you have collected your data, you need to explain your data analysis techniques. So, this part of your proposal describes how you're going to interpret the data you collect. For quantitative research, you might use statistical analysis to look for patterns or relationships between variables. So, for qualitative research, on the other hand, you might use thematic coding, for example, to identify common themes in the responses you have gathered. If you're using mixed methods, you'll need to explain how you are going to integrate both qualitative and quantitative data to provide a comprehensive analysis. Finally, make sure you address validation of findings. This is important because it shows how you will ensure that your results are credible. Now, in qualitative research, you might use techniques like triangulation, where you use multiple sources or methods to confirm your findings. In quantitative research, you might focus on ensuring the reliability and validity of your instruments. Whatever the method, the goal is to demonstrate that your results are trustworthy and accurate. Now let's look at the different formats for research proposal, depending on whether you are conducting qualitative, quantitative, or mixed methods research. For a qualitative proposal, the focus is on exploring meanings, right? Experiences and perspectives. In this format, you'll start with an introduction that outlines the problem and then follow it up by research questions that guide the study. Your methods section will describe how you will collect the data, which is usually done through interviews. And then through, if it's not interviews, then probably focus groups or observations. Then you will also need to explain how you will ensure the credibility of your findings through techniques like triangulation or member checking, as mentioned previously. A quantitative proposal is more structured and it focuses on testing hypotheses or measuring variables. It typically includes an introduction and a literature review to justify the study, and then follow that up by a detailed methods section. So, the methods section should include information about your sample, data collection instruments, and how you plan to analyze the data. Quantitative proposals often use statistical methods to analyze the data, and your results section should explain how you will present these findings, usually through charts, through graphs, or through tables. Finally, for mixed methods proposals, you'll need to combine the elements of both qualitative and quantitative approaches, right? So, in this format, you'll clearly explain how you plan to collect both types of data. And more importantly, and this is the part which makes it mixed methods, you need to explain how you're going to integrate them, both parts, both quanti and quali, in order to answer your research questions. So, this type of proposal requires careful planning to ensure that both data types complement each other and provide a more comprehensive view of the research problem.